Good morning. We come today to a difficult question, and one which Jesus faces up to in his usual straight way. It's the subject of divorce. The different rabbis in Jesus' day had an ongoing debate. The one group said that a person could divorce his wife for any reason, and the other group said they could only divorce their wife in the case of adultery. Two arguments which were existing in the time of Jesus. And as these arguments went on, one day they come to Jesus and they say, which of them is right? What should we do in this situation? And Jesus said to them, well, what do you think? They said, well, Moses gave us the right to divorce, and he had in his law. And Jesus said, yes, he did. But that's not the way God wants it to be. Let me try to put it into a more practical way that we might understand. I have two legs, and I'm glad I've got two legs. And if you said to me, do you want to have a leg cut off? I would say, no, thank you. I'm quite happy with having two legs. But I'm practical enough to know that today or tomorrow, I could go out for a ride in the car. And sometime in the future, I could have an accident. And in that accident, I could really damage one of my legs. The surgeons would come to me and they would say quite simply, we cannot save the leg. There's only one thing that we can do. We have to cut it off. And with great regret, I would sign the piece of paper, I would go to sleep, and I would wake up with just one leg. Now, I'm not advocating that people should have one leg. I'm advocating that healthy people should have two legs. I'm advocating and saying simply that in any situation which we can envisage, two legs are better than one. But we all know that these accidents can happen, and we all know that these situations can arise. Now, when we look at Jesus' life, and when he's questioned about divorce, he says quite simply, it is against God's purposes that you should do this. When you make this covenant promise one to another, you should keep the covenant promise. You should not break it, as one group of rabbis are saying, for any reason. And you shouldn't even do it for the case of adultery. You should quite simply say, no, we will go on with this covenant and we will keep this covenant. But just as with the legs, we have to be sensible enough to know that situations may arise where quite simply the divorce has to take place. It's not something you want to advocate, and it's not something you want to practice. And I think in our present society we are getting into a dangerous position because we're not actually practicing polygamy, but people are divorcing for one reason after another. And in other societies which are very close to us, it is quite common, for instance, to go into American society at the moment and find people in their second, their third, or even their fourth marriages because they have actually given up and walked away from it. It has become part of the culture that people divorce easily. Well, it may cost them a lot financially, but they divorce easily. This is what Jesus was actually preaching against. He was saying you must take these things seriously. Now, when couples come before me and they say, I want to get married, I assume, I talk to them about it, of course, in the marriage plans, but I assume that is their intention that they should be married and stay married for life. That is the Christian teaching. But I'm also in my own self aware that things can go wrong and difficulties can arise. And when people come to me later and said our marriage has failed, it is with great sympathy that I ask God's blessing upon them and accept that just like the amputated leg, this is something we must in certain situations accept.